Alright guys, TacticalRab back again today. Hope you're all doing well and enjoying your day so far. And after the New York Subliners collapse of the first week of the CDL, they make a very surprising roster change, bringing royalty in for Neptune. A lot of pro players are convinced that this new roster is not going to work out by any means, and that Crimsix and Clayster have to split up if this team wants to have success in the long term. Could Clayster get dropped from this team? Certainly a lot to dive into today. Very much intrigued to your thoughts in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed the video. Subscribe if you are new as always, I'd really appreciate it. Let's just dive straight on into things. Of course, these are the point standings right now. As you see it on the screen, you can't even see the Subliners. You have to scroll all the way down to 11th and 12th, where they are currently tied with the Paris Legion, with the goals 0-3. Isn't as bad as yet as 0-4. But this week is not an ideal set of matches for them again. Their final game, I believe, is against FaZe on the Championship Sunday. They play Boston, I believe, first, then they play Atlanta FaZe. Far from easy at all. Of course, these are the point standings, looking very nice indeed. FaZe and Surge here tied for number one, same map win-loss as well. But and also I thought it was kind of interesting that Optic Tech says yesterday when we looked at the rankings that the CDL came out with on the end of the stream, they were actually behind Rokkr in 9th, because I thought maybe because Rokkr had the head-to-heads, whereas seemingly the tiebreakers they've got going on here is just map count, right? Because Optic have a better map count than Rokkr, so right now they've put them above them, at least on this standings list, but I wonder whether they'll do it head-to-head or whether they'll do it in map count. I'm not exactly sure what the tiebreaker rules are. Hopefully the CDL can explain them over the coming days, because I'm sure tiebreakers are going to be a massive consideration, because only the top 8 starting winners bracket. So we'll see if the CDL deliver the goods on that front in the coming days. This also from Simp, because it's kind of been impressive so far, I think, in this game. This FaZe, despite really not playing their best cards, they're still 3-0, right? That's the thing. Last year, they lost at the kickoff event, whatever it was called. I think it might have been the kickoff classic before. They lost to Florida, and since then they went on an 11-win streak right at the start of Cold War. This year, despite losing again at the kickoff classic, like they came top 8 there, they lost to Seattle Surge. Like since then, again, they've started on a winning streak, and they do seem to be catching some momentum. So it is kind of scary, right, for the opposition, especially because so far Simp really hasn't been performing well. Like this guy is, I think significantly, maybe not significantly, just because Arcitys is also like maybe hovering at a 1.0 or something. But Simp is probably the worst player right now on Atlanta FaZe, which you don't really expect to last for all that long, right? He's kind of said how he feels a little bit uncomfortable on the map right now, and he reckons it's time for the comeback, which is quite a scary, right? Because I mean, look, Cellium has been out of control. aBeZy's been great the last week or so. When Simp finally turns up and drops a 1.2, like once again, FaZe look at a bit of a powerhouse this year, right? But I do think it's going to be more competitive for them this season, especially what we've seen so far. This also, let's dive into the New York Subliners stuff, right? Because Neptune, he's no longer on their starting team. This I thought was kind of a crazy screenshot, actually, of Spark dropping 29 kills in the first rotation with the new Challenger squad that Neptune is running with. Of course, Neptune was saying in a clip a couple of days ago that like he was going to put into difficult roles by Crimsix and Clayster, what they wanted to do with him on the New York side, and maybe well, that kind of costed him in the team and made him feel uncomfortable, all these kind of issues. And some of you guys were saying as well in yesterday's video, I thought was an interesting comment about the fact that Shotzzy, when they first had him in their team in Dallas Empire, he was also kind of restricted in what he could do. They were telling him exactly how to play the game, how to deal with things, and kind of when they let him go a little bit more loose towards the end of the year, just go rogue and get kills on the map, that's when they actually became the best team in the game. So maybe if they'd have stuck with Neptune, they may have realized a similar thing, but well, of course, they've not made the decision to do that, and bringing him back seems to be, well, if you bring him back at this point, the chemistry there, like, is it really going to work out, right? That's the thing. We see with the top teams right now, like the likes of FaZe, the likes of Seattle, London even, right, are up there. The chemistry on the team is very strong indeed. They trust each other, they believe in each other, they like gas each other up and stuff like this. And if you bring someone that you've dropped in kind of, well, controversial circumstances back into the team at any point, it doesn't really spell success, I think, for the long-term longevity of the roster. And this is what there's been a lot of talk about these last several days. And aBeZy gives his thoughts on it, right? We saw a couple of guys saying, look, Clayster and Crimsix, can this actually work in a 4 versus 4 environment? And aBeZy definitely echoes these opinions right here. He thinks that in a 4v4 situation, Clay and Crim just aren't going to hack it anymore. Of course, look, a few years ago, back in the Complexity days in Black Ops 2, for example, it was a fantastic duo. Like, aBeZy even is sitting on the podcast right here, and he even made a comment, the fact that, okay, yeah, I wonder if there's a guy who can maybe get the best out of these two as a duo in a 4 versus 4 environment. But of course, back in the day, things were slightly different, right? This is when Clayster and Crimsix, their slaying power was off the charts. Nowadays, things are slightly different. They're not there to be monster slayers. Like, you're not really expecting Clayster to come in and drop a 1.2 as a main AR. And Crimsix, despite, I think he's been solid so far in this game, still great in search and destroy, getting a load of first bloods, but he's not there to drop crazy numbers like he was back in the day in a team like this, when aBeZy and TP, and well, TP could basically just be the OBJ guy, aBeZy could slay out a little bit, and then Crim and Clay would carry the rest of the slaying that was required. Nowadays, things are slightly different. They've moved into a different time in their career, and therefore, do they work in a 4 versus 4 environment again? Is the slaying power enough to keep up with some of the top teams in the game? It is a very important question. Doug disagrees with what aBeZy says. I'll share a couple of clips for you guys here in just a second. Like, he reckons they still can certainly work. It makes sense that they could work if they can bring the best out of the youngsters they have on their team. Hydra, I think they're getting a fair bit of action from. from, but the fourth player is a question mark, right? And I said yesterday, I just don't see how Royalty is a long-term solution. I don't see Royalty being here in like a month or 2 months' time. Like, I just think they're going to have to make some sort of other move. So it's like, what do you do if you're the Subliners? Do you keep transitioning players again and again and again in that fourth role alongside Crim, Clay, and Hydra to try and find someone that does work? Do you wait for Clayster to kind of step up his statistical performances? Because your main AR, you probably need the main AR to be dropping better numbers than Clay has so far. I think he has like a 0.8 or something so far this season. Not ideal. Last season, he obviously started out much stronger than this year. Or do you consider another option? Do you consider the nuclear option of despite putting Crim and Clay together to actually make some sort of serious change? And Parasite was even suggesting, look, right now Clay's the guy who's got to step it up. If he doesn't, then well, maybe that's what they need to change. Can we just keep swapping around fourth players for the rest of the year? Or is the Crim Clay duo in 4v4? Have they got to take the L and realize this might not work? And is Clayster the guy that should be out of there for potentially another main assault rifle?
Crim/Clay/ maybe the coaches, Revin, whoever, they were trying to like mold him to play super structured, and it just didn't work. Whereas if they kind of let him do his thing, I think that they would have been better off than making a roster change. And I'm going to get cooked for this. I do like the fact that they made moves, okay, because something clearly wasn't working. I don't think it's a one-person swap. I think Royalty's just in a bad situation now. Like, no matter what, he's going to be in a bad situation. The team's not going to improve with him, at least to the level that they're hoping for. But I just don't think you can have Crim and Clay on the same team in 4v4. I think in 5v5 you can do it because you have that extra player, but I think that's where the real issue stems.
They're, like I said, they're getting outslayed by like 80 kills in a series, bro. I don't care who your fourth is. You could have LeBron on your team. If you're getting outslayed by 80 kills, like, you're gonna lose. Period.
Yeah, I think mainly the Clay just needs to start playing better. Like, if we were to like isolate one person,
Grim too.
Yeah,
everybody not named Paco.
Everybody
needs to start playing better.
But I think Clay's has been exceptionally worse from everybody else, in my opinion. No offense, I love the game, but
I think, like what you said, Ian, NYSL, right? If they continue to have those woes, if Crim and Clay cannot find two guys that they work with, yeah, I don't know. That'd be interesting, right? Because I can't imagine a world where one of them just gets dropped or benched, right? Like, I would see them getting traded, or I would hope so. So yeah, I don't know if it's logistically possible, but that would kind of be where my head's at.
If we're going to talk about like things that just are just not, like, who cares about logistics at this point? Like, once again, all of Paris, why?
I'm going strictly off of like in-game.
Yeah, just in-game performance.
They're trying to improve
all
performance.
Paris besides like Donnie, of course, and then to Clay for Tom Gravity. Let's go, do it. Like,
my God, imagine Tom Gravity and Crim on the same team.
I'm just throwing some names out there.
So I think that's the concern that the Subliners most certainly will have right now about, okay, they've brought Royalty into the team for Neptune, but how long is this actually going to be the case? We've seen the issues that Royalty's had. Do they even have the visa situation sorted to get him to the US? Like, all these other questions. Of course, there's other guys that could potentially cycle into that spot. We saw the likes of Johnny, right? There was a lot of talk about him, about actually being their fourth player instead of Royalty. And look, if Royalty doesn't work out, like, do they try a Johnny, right? Do they try another player that might be a free agent on the market? Do they try and bring Neptune back and say, okay, you can play a little bit freer? Like, how many iterations of this do they go through? And if they don't see success, do they realize, okay, maybe the Crim Clay thing isn't going to work out? So I feel like on paper they should be able to figure this out and work something out, but so far it hasn't really worked. And you feel like if they go through a couple of iterations here and nothing really works, then maybe that duo in 4v4 actually isn't quite cut out this time around. Like, this for example from Clayster back in 2020 when he says, stinks with the process he's going through again after he got dropped from Dallas Empire going into the Cold War season when it went back to 4 versus 4, and of course he found himself on New York at the time. Now, well, Crimsix stayed on Dallas Empire there. So when that team was forced to make a change before, they stuck with Crimsix over Clayster, and Clayster was the one to get dropped. And, who knows what happens this time around if this team does fail. And, of course, Clay and Crim kind of have a legacy to uphold in the sense that, as a duo, they've been dominant for their entire career. Like, their stats as a duo from Complexity through to Dallas Empire are completely absurd. Their average placing is like a 1.8. They win over half the tournaments they attend. Like, I'm pretty sure they've only attended 15 tournaments as a duo. They've won 11 of them. They've been in 13 of the grand finals. Like, their stats as a duo are pretty insane. Of course, that legacy isn't going to get taken away from them, but they've got to think that, like, look, their record is so good that if it doesn't work out this time, maybe that's a sign that it's maybe not meant to be anymore, right? Especially if the slaying isn't there, because statistically, they are getting bodied every single series. Hydra's the only guy pretty much even. Like, Crim's dropping a 0.9, Clay's dropping a 0.8. It's just not going to hack it, right? Like, you need more slaying than that. But as Clayster says right here, wherever I go next, I hope I'm there until I retire, right? Saying, look, he wants to be part of New York until he retires. So if the team decides, like, enough's enough, Clay, of course, had to step away last year. There was even talk about whether he would even come back here into Vanguards. Like, I think a lot of people are thinking, could this be Clayster's last year, right? Like, if they decide that Clay maybe is underperforming and, Crim and Clay kind of think together that maybe this isn't going to work out this time, and there's talk about, okay, do we need to upgrade the player in our main AR position, and Clayster ends up finding himself out of there, like, does he actually find another team on the league, or does he decide, okay, enough's enough right at this point? And that's kind of the concern for a lot of people, that some guys like Crimsix and Clayster, even this was the title of the first No Pressure episode, Crimsix's last season, both of these guys are considering, like, what is it going to take for us to hang up the sticks and call it a day? And with the suggestion from Parasite that maybe even, Clayster for a guy like Gravity, right, or another made assault rifle in the challenger side, if that's going to kind of up the slaying power and the potential of the team that seemingly they might well be lacking right now, like, that maybe is what they have to do. Look, I think Clayster can turn it around, I think Crimsix can turn it around, but I still am kind of yet to be convinced that at least this team of 4 is what's going to work into the long term. Very much intriguing your perspective in the comment section below for sure. This also to mention from Money Hill stats, thought these are really cool actually. Just said, well, hardpoint summaries so far in this game. Like, I've never really seen stats presented like this, so thought it was definitely worthy of showing. This is on Berlin how it looks right now. So this is major qualifiers, week 1 and 2 combined. So, well, in terms of the hardpoints, you can see them on the left-hand side here. This is the amount of time it garnered per hill. So interestingly enough, P1 is kind of more of a money hill than anyone else. P5 is crazy contest fest. And, 8 games played, 250-138, the biggest win. Closest game, 250-244, the Rokkr versus Optic match, of course. So, yeah, pretty interesting that right now we've not seen too many 100-point clubs come through. Not really sure if any of these maps have seen a 100-point club so far. Average KD for the winning team of 1.17, average KD for the losing team 0.86. That was kind of interesting. And, here's Bakaj, right? So a slightly different story here once again. Yeah, it was P1 that's a crazy contest fest. But after that, everything is pretty much back and forth. Most teams get about 20 seconds on each of the hardpoints right here. But everything is very closely contested. The most kills that any team has got in a game is 145 by Los Angeles Guerrillas, which is pretty absurd. And, FaZe beat Thieves 251-36 on this one. The closest game, of course, we saw just a couple of days ago, 221-220 so far. 12 matches played on this map. Gather 2 hardpoint much less played, only 6 times it's been played so far. And, again, across the board, like, you don't really see too many hardpoints that are complete money hills. Like, technically P2 is the more contest-heavy one, and then the other ones, but they're so marginal between them. It doesn't feel all that much like a traditional hardpoint map by any means, the fact that there's no real money hill, no real contest-heavy one, and, even on Tuscan, it's a kind of similar story. Like, this game, it just feels like the way the spawns work, there's no particular hill. It's like, okay, if we get the spawns for this one, we're going to be able to lock down a massive chunk of time. Like, that's kind of the case on Berlin. Like, you can see Berlin is probably the biggest difference between the most contest-heavy and the easiest one to hold. Outside of that, most of these maps are pretty close, so it does make things interesting, but at the same time, it's maybe not traditional. This could well change, of course, over time as things progress as well. But yeah, so far, no 100-point clubs here in Call of Duty Vanguard. And just wanted to finish out with this take actually from Doug St. Martin, because we saw what he said earlier on the Clay and Crim and Clay situation, that he thinks they can still work. Jetpacks are the most overrated thing in Call of Duty history. Interesting take. I think people would certainly have agreed with this a few years ago. Nowadays, people are certainly coming around to the idea that maybe we need to bring jetpacks back ASAP. But very much intriguing your thoughts and all this stuff in the comment section below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did enjoy it, hit a like button. Tell the YouTube gods this is a good video. I just like you should see it as well. And I've grown the competitive Call of Duty community. Thank you as always. Take care. And I will see you next time.